Hey guys, tonight we step into the freezing mist of a Viking morning, where your feet are already numb before you've even left the warmth of your straw-stuffed bedroll. You're not in your world anymore. This isn't central heating and oat milk territory. This is damp wood, wool that smells like goat, and a floor so cold it could file your toenails. Welcome to your one day as a Viking warrior. You won't survive this. But that's okay, because for the next little while, we're going to imagine you do. You'll fight, feast, freeze, and maybe, just maybe, become a legend. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and what time it is where you are in the comments. I always love seeing where we're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wait before the sun, not because you're disciplined or particularly heroic, but because a drop of icy condensation just fell off the thatched roof and landed squarely on your forehead. It feels like nature herself is saying, "Get up. You have axes to sharpen." The hut smells like smoked fish, wet dog, and that one leather tunic someone refuses to wash. You blink into the half-dark and sit up, joints crackling like a creaky cartwheel. Your breath clouds the air. Outside, the coastal wind sings its off-key lullaby through the cracks in the wood. You pull on your tunic rough wool, dyed the brown of whatever plant juice was lying around. A thick belt, knife sheathed at your hip. Your boots are stiff from yesterday's rain. You stomp them into submission. Somewhere to your left, someone groans awake with all the enthusiasm of a sheep headed to market. Today is no ordinary day. Today, you march to battle. But first, breakfast. You shuffle toward the hearth where a pot of pottage is trying very hard not to be food. It's gray. It jiggles. You hope the lumps are barley. You poke it with a wooden spoon, then glance at an older warrior who's already chewing. His beard twitches like he's regretting his life choices in real time. You eat. You regret. One mainstream historical fact: Viking warriors often started their days with hearty but monotonous meals, grains like barley or oats, stewed overnight with whatever meat scraps or root vegetables were available. It wasn't glamorous, but it was fuel. The elders are murmuring by the doorway, casting occasional glances toward the sky. One is counting crows. Another's poking at a rune-carved bone. Omens. Always omens. One grumbles that the gods are restless. Another claims the sea smells wrong. You resist the urge to ask what right sea smells like. Historians still argue whether Viking omens were actual religious belief or just early forms of anxiety management. Either way, the results were the same: prepare for violence, just in case Thor is feeling spicy. You step outside into the mist. The village is already moving. Smoke curls from longhouses, children chase chickens, and a young woman is shouting at a goat with the fury of a full-time god. You pass a blacksmith pounding out something vaguely axe-shaped, sparks jumping like fireflies. You give him a nod. He gives you a grunt. You're starting to feel the day sink into your bones. A small boy runs up to you, cheeks red, nose running, and hands you a strip of dried fish. You thank him with the solemnity of someone receiving a sacred relic. The fish tastes like seawater and despair, but it's protein. Suddenly, a voice, your mother's, calls out from behind. You turn. She's older now, her hair a braided silver rope. She hands you a small cloth pouch. Inside, a carved charm, a bit of fur, and a tiny bronze hammer. For Thor to see you, she says. She doesn't hug you. She just looks. That Viking kind of love, deep, wordless, and with excellent posture. You nod. She nods. You both pretend this isn't probably the last time you'll ever see each other. And now comes the quiet moment. You walk alone to the edge of the village, where the sea yawns out into infinity. The longships are docked like sleeping dragons. Sails furled. Oars ready. The mist licks at your ankles like a lazy cat. This is your first real raid. You've trained. You've fought in drunken brawls and chased off wolves. But today is different. Today, there will be enemies you don't recognize. Blades you've never seen. Death that speaks a different language. Fringe historical detail: some young Viking warriors, known as Drengr, took pride in dying on their first raid, believing it a fast track to Valhalla. Whether that was brave or just bad luck is still up for debate. You watch as your crewmates gather. Some joke, some check their weapons obsessively. One is singing off-key about meat and goats. Another is sharpening a sword like it personally offended him. Your best friend, Rolf, wide as 2 trees and twice as hairy, claps you on the back so hard you nearly faceplant into the sand. Try not to die before we land, he grins. You laugh, but it comes out thin. The sun is starting to burn through the mist. A low horn sounds from the shore, 3 mournful notes that seem to echo forever. You step onto the gangplank. The wood creaks beneath your feet. The sea waits. The longship rocks gently as you step aboard, the hull slick with salt and seaweed. You've dreamt about this moment for years, sailing out like the heroes in campfire songs. But in the songs, no one ever mentions how cold the benches are or how much the boat smells like smoked herring and nervous sweat. You find your place between 2 older warriors, both of whom look like they were carved from shipwrecks. One has a missing ear. The other has a tattoo of what might be a raven or might just be an unfortunate birthmark. Neither speaks. They just nod at you, then spit over the side in perfect sync. A weirdly reassuring welcome. Rolf flops down next to you, muttering something about the waves looking extra judgy today. He's wearing a fur cloak that could hide 3 children and is fiddling with the grip on his axe. It's chipped. He calls it Toothbreaker. You've never had the heart to ask why. The order to shove off comes not with a grand speech, but with a grunted row. Oars splash. Muscles strain. And just like that, you're gliding out into the icy gray beyond. Rowing, as it turns out, is misery in rhythmic form. The bench is too low. Your legs keep cramping. Your hands are already blistering, and you're not even out of sight of land. The man across from you, his beard thick enough to qualify as a second face, starts singing some rower's chant in Old Norse. It sounds like someone arguing with a bear. Historical fact: Viking ships, especially the iconic Skei, were marvels of engineering, long, sleek, and surprisingly fast. Crews rode them with brutal efficiency, sometimes covering over 75 miles in a day if the wind was with them. And if your arms didn't fall off. Water sloshes in through the hull's seams. You try not to imagine how deep the fjord is. A gull screeches overhead, then drops something unfortunate onto the shoulder of the guy 2 rows ahead. He curses in 3 dialects. Behind you, the shore shrinks into haze. This is it now. No turning back. No oops, I left the fire going. Just wind, wood, and waves. The drumbeat picks up, one of the older warriors tapping a hide-covered drum with a bone. You're supposed to match it. Your timing is not great. Rolf keeps glancing over like you're murdering the rhythm. You probably are. Coordination isn't easy when your arms feel like they've been individually cursed by Loki. And then, the mist thickens. A soft wall of gray rolls in around the ship. You can no longer see the bow. The sea disappears. Even your own breath starts to look suspicious. Perfect, Rolf mutters. Fog. Classic omen. Can't just have a nice, sunny plunder. The man with the raven tattoo squints at the sky. This is when the Draug arise, he says softly. Great, you reply. Can they row? He doesn't laugh. Quirky detail, some Viking crews carried what they called sea charms, little carved tokens or bones tied with hair, to ward off sea spirits or bring favorable winds. Yours? A carved seal tooth Rolf swears was blessed by a half-blind vulva. You keep it in your boot. Just in case. The fog presses closer. Then comes the whisper. At first, you think it's wind. But no, it's too steady. Too human. Someone up front is murmuring. A prayer? A chant? It slithers back along the benches until even you can feel the hum in your ribs. The man beside you leans close. That's Scardy, he says, eyes narrowing. Thinks he's got the sight. Sight of what? Death. He says it's always close in the fog. You look forward. Can't make out faces, but one rower is clearly rocking back and forth. Chanting. His hands are wrapped in red cloth. You don't ask why. Historians still argue whether berserkers were real or symbolic ecstatic fighters who entered trance-like rages before battle. Some say drugs were involved. Others say belief alone turned men into monsters. Whatever it was, Scardy is giving off definite I once bit a bear energy. You row. The drum beats on. Your arms ache. Eventually, the fog thins just a little. Through the mist, you glimpse shapes. Jagged coastline. Trees like claws. A crooked cliff face, dark against the dawn. Somewhere behind it, the sun tries to rise but looks like it's having second thoughts. Land ho, someone calls. And you immediately wish they'd picked a less cliché line. Still, there it is. Foreign soil. The drum slows. Oars lift. Silence falls like snow. Your ship glides forward now under its own quiet momentum. The wind is just enough to carry you the last stretch. Somewhere out there, people live. People who, by the end of today, might not anymore. But for now, the world is strangely still. You feel a prickle on your neck. Maybe it's the cold. Maybe it's nerves. Maybe it's the ancient Viking part of your soul that knows something's watching. The oars are drawn in. The prow scrapes sand. You've landed. And just like that, the real test begins. You look at your hands raw, red, shaking. Rolf leans over and says, "Good news. We made it." Bad news? Now we gotta do something. The beach crunches beneath your boots as you disembark, the cold, wet sand sucking at your steps like it's trying to pull you back into the sea. Behind you, the longship looms like a sleeping beast, carved prow glaring out at the unfamiliar shore. Ahead of you, pine forest, gray sky, and silence so thick it rings in your ears. You scan the tree line. No movement. No birds. No sound, except the quiet shuffle of dozens of warriors disembarking behind you. It should feel like a moment of triumph, your first raid, your first real act as a Viking, but mostly, it feels like the world is holding its breath. And you're pretty sure your bladder is, too. Rolf stretches and grunts. Well, we're not dead yet. That's probably a good sign. He draws his axe and slaps it against his palm like he's negotiating with it. You name yours yet? You look down at your weapon. It's not glamorous. Single-edged, well-balanced, slightly chipped from some overzealous firewood chopping. You shake your head. Call it something, he says. Makes it loyal. You're seriously telling me naming the axe makes it better? Yes, he says with complete sincerity. Mine's Toothbreaker. It never lets me down. You snort. Sounds like a goat. Exactly, he grins. Historical fact: Viking warriors often gave names to their weapons, especially swords and axes, names like Legbiter, Skull-splitter, and Odin's Fong. It wasn't superstition, it was identity. You weren't just a man swinging a blade, you were part of a legacy. A story. You grip your axe a little tighter. Maybe you'll name it later Blisterbane, perhaps, given what it's already done to your palms. Your Jarl strides forward, cutting through the fog like a meat-scented thundercloud. He's tall, broad, and more scars than man. His voice could sand a plank. We move now, he bellows. Fast. Quiet. Take only what fights back. The order isn't shouted twice. Men snap into motion. Some strap helmets tighter. Others mutter prayers. You look for your sea charm and realize with horror it's fallen out of your boot. Too late to go looking. You're on your own. You fall in with the rest, trudging up the damp slope, the forest closing in with every step. And that's when the shouting starts. Not yours. Theirs. Voices from somewhere ahead, sharp, panicked, foreign. You can't make out words, but you know the tone. Fear. Someone must have seen your ship. Maybe a scout. Maybe a child. Either way, surprise is gone. The Jarl spits. Plan B. You were hoping Plan B was go home, but no, it's charge. Just like that, the line surges forward. You run. Branches whip your face. Mud grabs at your boots. The forest flashes by in green and brown smears. Ahead, you hear the clang of metal, the thud of wood, the shriek of someone who did not expect company. Your breath comes ragged. Your heart pounds like Thor himself is hammering your ribs. A clearing opens, small village, wooden huts, smoking fires. People scatter like spooked chickens. A man with a pitchfork charges a Viking twice his size and gets immediately yeeted into a haystack. You try not to make eye contact with anything sharp. Then a figure rushes you. It's fast, older, but angry. Swinging a crude axe. No armor. Just fury. You raise your own weapon. Too slow. Clang. Your blow glances off his haft. He swings again. Misses. You step in and thunk. You did it. You don't even remember how, but he's down. Breathing. Groaning. But not a threat. You stare at your hands. They're shaking again. This is not like training. There are no clean rules. Just panic. Mud. Screaming. Fringe detail: contrary to popular belief, not all Viking raids were bloodbaths. Many settlements paid Danegeld, a kind of please don't burn our village bribe, to avoid conflict. But today? There's no Danegeld. Just adrenaline. Rolf appears beside you, drenched in mud and grinning like a lunatic. You're still alive, he says, surprised. So are you. Not for lack of trying. You both duck as an arrow thuds into a tree beside you. Time to move. You press deeper into the village, leaping over a broken fence, dodging terrified livestock. A pig runs past you squealing like it's narrating its own memoir. You duck into a hut. Inside, a woman clutching two children, staring wide-eyed. You freeze. She doesn't scream. Doesn't move. Just holds her kids tight. You back out slowly. You're not here for them. Not today. Outside, the shouting is dying down. The smell of smoke is rising. Somewhere, someone's laughing, which seems wildly inappropriate. You regroup with the others near the largest hut, likely the local chieftain's home. It's already been sacked. The Jarl stands in the doorway, bloody axe in one hand, a sack of something jingling in the other. "Burn it," he says flatly. Rolf looks at you. You look at the village. That's not what you came here to do, right? But the order stands. Someone throws a torch. Historical debate. Some historians argue Viking raids were more about intimidation and fast loot than wanton destruction. Others believe burning was a key psychological weapon. It's hard to say. The stories that survived were often told by the losers. The fire catches fast. Thatched roofs ignite like dry moss. Smoke curls into the sky, thick and bitter. You step back, coughing. You catch sight of that woman again, now being led out of the village by someone who speaks her language. They're crying. She's glaring at you like she'll never forget your face. You wonder what that makes you. Hero? Villain? Survivor? First raid's the worst, Rolf says beside you, voice quieter now. After this, it gets easier. You're not sure if that's comforting or horrifying. The Jarl calls the retreat. Time to go. Behind you, the village burns. Ahead, the forest yawns open once more. And you? You walk toward the trees with blood on your boots, smoke in your hair, and a mind full of questions you're not ready to answer. Your legs are pudding. Burned pudding. You didn't even know your knees could throb like this. But here you are, dragging yourself back through the muddy forest path toward the longship, every joint complaining like a Viking elder denied his mead. Behind you, smoke snakes into the sky, the village still burning. The crackle of fire lingers in your ears like a phantom sound. A part of you expects it'll never quite go away. Ahead, the coastline peeks through trees. You can hear the sea again, steady, ancient, indifferent. You glance down at your boots. One of them is missing a strap. The other is now mostly mud with ambitions. Your clothes are wet with sweat, dew, and probably other things you're not going to emotionally unpack right now. Rolf trudges beside you, dragging something wrapped in a torn cloak. Found a shield worth keeping, he pants. You suspect it's also doubling as his excuse not to help carry the loot. Want to trade it for a new spine, you mutter. He grins. Only if yours is less squeaky. The rest of your warband is strung out along the path, scattered like breadcrumbs. Some limp. Some talk loudly to cover their nerves. A few joke about whose axe landed the best hit. None of them mention what they saw in the huts. Historical fact, after raids, Vikings often returned immediately to their ships, preferring fast retreats over drawn-out occupation. Longships allowed quick getaways before counterattacks could organize. Hit hard, disappear faster, that was the method. You reach the shore, and for a moment, you just stand there, catching your breath, hands on knees, watching the waves roll in like they don't care what you just did. The longship is waiting, sleek, shadowed, its dragon head still sneering. You climb aboard with the grace of a collapsing goat. Your arms do not want to row. Ready, someone shouts. No, someone else answers. Probably Rolf. But the order comes anyway, row. You grit your teeth, grab the oar, and start pulling. The ache in your muscles is immediate. It's a full-body protest. Your shoulders whisper, please stop. Your lower back actually whimpers. And your palms, let's not even talk about them. If they were lips, they'd be suing. This is the part no bard sings about. No one composes ballads about the hour-long, post-murder arm workout. No one says, sing of the time Bjorn developed lifelong shoulder trauma. Because Viking rowing is not majestic. It's synchronized suffering. Rolf is no help. He starts humming again, some loud, tuneless tune about meat and mud and maiden beds. You focus on not passing out into the oar trough. Fringe detail: some Viking rowers, especially the younger or untested ones, were deliberately seated in the center of the ship, less risk of falling overboard when they collapsed from exhaustion or fear. You're definitely one of those. The sea stretches around you, gray and wide. You row. One of the older warriors offers you a sip from his skin. You take it. It's mead. Warm, slightly sour, tastes like fermented regret, but it dulls the sting in your hands. And then you notice the quiet. No one's shouting anymore. The only sounds are water and wood. You look around. Faces are tired. Eyes downcast. The excitement has bled out, and what's left is something quieter. Not guilt exactly. But wait. Even Rolf has stopped humming. Didn't go like I pictured, he says. Yeah, you say. Thought there'd be more cheering. And fewer pitchforks. And less screaming. There's a long pause. I still want to do it again, he says softly. You nod. You hate how quickly the answer comes to you. You hate how part of you agrees. Because the rush, the adrenaline, the aliveness of it, it's still in your chest, buzzing under the bruises. Historians still argue whether Viking raiders viewed violence as duty, thrill, or survival. Most likely, it was all three, tangled together like seaweed in the hull. They didn't romanticize war, they lived too close to death for that. But they did believe in glory. And if you could live long enough to earn it? Well, maybe that was worth everything. A gull circles overhead, shrieking at the world. The coastline recedes. The horizon stretches. Your arms ache a little less now. Not because you've gotten stronger, but because they've gone slightly numb. You look down at your hands. Calloused. Dirty. And, now, holding something. A small cloth bundle. You forgot it was tucked into your belt. Your mother's charm. You unfold it gently. The tiny bronze hammer catches the light, Thor's symbol, polished from years of handling. The bit of fur still smells faintly of home. The seashell sewn into the corner, you never asked why she added that. Maybe for luck. Maybe just because. You hold it tight for a moment. Rolf leans over. You gonna name that, too? You roll your eyes. I was thinking. Charmy McCharmface. He chuckles. Perfect. Make sure you whisper it before battle. The wind shifts. Salt stings your nose. The sail goes up. Oars are pulled in. The ship picks up speed, the sea finally working in your favor. You're coasting now, letting the current do the work. The sun peeks through the clouds. Just a sliver. Enough to make the water sparkle like scattered coins. You let your shoulders drop. Let the rhythm of the ship cradle you. Let the day bleed away with the waves. You survived. That's all that matters for now. Scardy hasn't blinked in 2 hours. That would be fine if he were sleeping. Or napping. Or dead. But no, he's wide-eyed, perfectly upright, and humming to himself like the world's creepiest lullaby. Red cloth still wrapped around his hands, gaze fixed straight ahead as if he's watching a vision only he can see. You try not to stare. You try really hard. But let's be honest, it's hard to ignore the guy who's whispering to his axe like it's a misunderstood lover. Is he always like this? You murmur to Rolf. Only on days ending in EGGR, he replies, which, in Old Norse, is most of them. Scardy's been quiet until now, but something about this return voyage seems to be stirring the sea madness in him. You wonder, half jokingly, half praying, if Odin really does whisper to certain men. If so, he's chosen the loudest listener. Fringe detail: berserkers, those famed Viking shock troopers, were said to channel animal spirits in battle, often entering a trance-like state where pain and fear were replaced by raw fury. Whether they used drugs, rituals, or just really strong self-delusion remains hotly debated. Skardi? Probably all three. You shift uncomfortably on your bench. The longship slices through the waves, but your muscles scream louder than the wind. Every part of your body feels like it's held together by spit and stubbornness. Your left thigh might be plotting a rebellion. And then Skardi speaks. Not to anyone. Just, aloud. Tomorrow we'll feast on today's bones, he murmurs, eyes locked on the horizon. Rolf looks at you. That's new. You nod. How poetic. Skardi grins. He laughs at the wrong moments. Rolf's face falls. Okay, that's less poetic. You try to focus on something else. Anything else? The sail? Frayed at the corners. The ropes? Taut. The oars? Pulled in tight. The horizon? Slowly expanding into the familiar shapes of home. Yes. Home. If home means damp huts, shouting goats, and people who judge you by how many enemies you've beheaded before lunch. But right now? You take it over berserker karaoke and your growing concern about Skardi chewing someone's nose off before dinner. You breathe in deep. The air has changed, less salt, more pine. Your coastline is near. The Jarl stands at the front of the ship, one hand on the prow, face unreadable. His cloak billows, because of course it does. Always with the dramatic timing. You half expect thunder. He turns, finally, and bellows, prepare to dock. The command echoes across the ship. Men rise. Ropes are gathered. Weapons are checked, not for battle, but for ceremony. You remember, every return is also a performance. A moment to remind those back home that they still live under the shadow of warriors. Rolf slaps his armor, dusting off dried seafoam and goat hair. Ready to look heroic? You grunt. Do I have time to not smell like I fought a swamp? Nope. The longship glides toward the landing. Children appear first, scampering on the rocky beach. Then women. Then old men with eyes like sharpened flint, measuring every face. A dog barks excitedly at your boat, either welcoming you or challenging the prow dragon to a duel. As the hull grinds into the shore, the first cheer rises. You step off the ship onto land that feels both familiar and strange. Each step heavier, now that the adrenaline has drained. You try to smile. To look proud. But inside, something is quieter. The elders come forward. They say the right words. Ask the right questions. How many did you slay? Did anyone see Thor's hammer in the sky? Did you honor your ancestors? You nod. You lie a little. Everyone does. The truth isn't what matters right now. It's the legend. Historical fact: many Viking communities treated returning raiders with ritual respect. Songs were composed, feasts prepared, and tales traded. Success in raids wasn't just personal glory, it was status. And status could be inherited. You move through the gathering like a ghost, unsure of how to stand, how to speak, how to be after what you've done. Skardi is already surrounded by wide-eyed children, one of whom is touching the red cloth on his hands like it's magical. You silently wish them luck. You spot your mother standing apart. She doesn't rush. Doesn't wave. She just waits. You walk to her. She looks at you, really looks, and says nothing. Then places a warm hand on your cheek. Just once. And walks away. That's all the welcome you need. You want a bath. And sleep. And maybe to scream into a mossy log. But first, there's the feast. The Jarl calls it that, anyway. Feast might be generous. There's bread. There's broth. There's ale thick enough to patch a roof. But there's also music. And laughter. And for a few hours, the village fills with the sounds of people pretending everything is fine. You sit by the fire. Your legs stretched out, boots steaming. Rolf hands you a cup. To Toothbreaker, he toasts. You lift yours. To Charmy McCharmface. The others stare. He shrugs. It's a long story. You drink. And in the flicker of firelight, Scardy leans closer to you and whispers, "The next one will be bloodier." You stare at him. He smiles, slow and eerie. But maybe you'll be ready by then. Morning comes far too soon and with absolutely no respect for the concept of recovery. You wake to the sensation of your tongue having transformed overnight into a small piece of leather, your head full of thumping drums, and your stomach politely suggesting that last night's feast was, in fact, a terrible idea. The fire's gone out. The mead's gone too. So is half of Rolf's shirt, apparently, though he seems entirely unconcerned by that development. You sit up slowly, every bone creaking like an old ship in a storm. Your back isn't sore. Your entire existence is sore. And outside, the shouting begins. Tactical assembly in the longhouse. Now. You blink. Surely they don't mean you. You just got back. You were promised recovery. Maybe even a bath. But no. The Jarl's voice is unmistakable, rough, loud, and with the motivational style of a kicked wasp's nest. You drag yourself up and shuffle into the cold air, boots squelching through mud. The longhouse looms ahead, smoke trailing from its chimney like the morning's only successful escape plan. Inside, warriors gathered, sprawled on benches, sharpening blades, picking teeth, or still trying to blink the hangover out of their skulls. The air smells like sweat, fur, and too much onion. The Jarl stands at the front. His presence is immediate. He doesn't need to shout. He just exists with the density of a falling tree. Yesterday was fine, he says. You blink. Fine? We hit fast. We left faster. Some of you didn't entirely humiliate yourselves. He stares pointedly at a young man in the corner who blushes so hard it might combust his eyebrows. But that was only a beginning. Now we prepare for real work. We don't just raid. We conquer. He pauses. Dramatically, of course. You shift on the bench. Conquer? You thought you were still in the practice act stage of your career. Historical fact, Viking expansion wasn't just about random looting. Many expeditions aimed to establish control territories, trade routes, or seasonal settlements. Especially in places like the British Isles and Ireland, Vikings often shifted from raiders to rulers. The Jarl slams his fist down on the table. We sail again in 5 days. We take what's ours. And we show the coast what real power looks like. The room rumbles with low grunts and nods. Except from Scardy, who's staring at a spider in the rafters like it just told him a secret. You try to focus. This is important. The Jarl begins outlining formations, battle rolls, fallback signals. You're assigned to the right flank, with Rolf and a few others. Light-footed, fast blades, the Jarl says. Rolf, bless him, beams. You, meanwhile, try to figure out what part of your current bodily condition qualifies as light-footed. Maybe your left earlobe. You're handed a new shield. It's round, ashwood, rimmed in iron. It smells freshly oiled, and you almost feel bad for knowing you'll likely dent it on someone's face. Fringe detail, Vikings used relatively lightweight shields, often about 80 to 90 centimeters across. They were more for deflecting than absorbing blows. Some warriors even trained to hook enemies' weapons with the rim and yank them aside, agile defense, not brute force. The Jarl continues, laying out the target, a coastal fort, lightly defended, but rich. Trade port, he says. Silver. Livestock. Maybe monks. Rolf nudges you. Monks always have great cheese. You nod solemnly. Truly, the bravest prey. Skardi lets out a sudden cackle. Everyone freezes. He's still looking at the spider. You decide not to ask. The meeting winds down. Assignments are made. You're given 2 new things, a hardened leather vest and a nickname. You didn't ask for either. The vest is practical, padded with scraps of bone and fur. The nickname? Mudleg. Courtesy of someone who saw you slip during yesterday's retreat. Rolf thinks it's hilarious. I'm going to make it stick, he says cheerfully. Just wait. Soon the whole village will be chanting Mudleg the Merciless. Please don't. No promises, Mudleg. You step back outside. The sky is clear, cold. The fjord gleams like a blade under frost. The village is already preparing, smiths banging away, children dragging logs, old men arguing about boat trim. You're a part of it now. Not just a young warrior, but a gear in this loud, sweaty machine. And that's when the Jarl calls your name again. You spin. Yes? He strides over and tosses you a bundle. It's a helmet. You're first. Iron. Fitted with a nose guard. Slightly dented, slightly too big, and absolutely beautiful in its brutal simplicity. You turn it in your hands. You earned it, he says gruffly. Then walks away. You blink. Historical debate. Not all Viking warriors wore helmets, many fought bareheaded or in simple caps. The classic horned helmet? Total myth. But iron helmets with nose guards were used by wealthier or more experienced warriors. Being given one? A sign of trust. Or preparation. Or both. Rolf sidles up. Look at you, Mr. Helmet. You grin. Just a little. Because it does feel like something. Not victory. Not glory. Maybe just progress. You spend the rest of the day training. Drills in the mud. Formations in the rain. Shield wall exercises that leave you gasping. Your arms ache. Your feet blister. But you start to move a little faster. Swing a little cleaner. You begin to think that maybe next time, you won't freeze when the moment comes. As the sun sets, and you collapse near the hearth again, Rolf tosses a stick at your feet. Tomorrow, he says, you're sparring Skardi. You look over. He's still whispering to the spider. You groan. You know that feeling when the universe seems to line everything up just to test your life choices? That's how you feel standing on this strange new shore, ice fixed on a silent, unfamiliar coastline that smells like seaweed, wet pine, and anxiety. This place is different. Not because it looks more dangerous actually, it looks almost peaceful, in that way wolves do when they're pretending not to see you. But something about the air feels wrong. It's too still. Too quiet. Even the waves seem cautious, curling onto the rocks as if trying not to wake something. Your boots crunch softly on gravel as you and the warband fan out, weapons drawn, breath slow. No horns. No shouts. This time, stealth matters. Behind you, the longship rests, sails furled, dragon-headed prow blaring at the land like it's sizing up a rival. The sea is unusually calm, like it's waiting for a story to unfold. And you? You're the story. Rolf, crouched beside you, whispers, "Smell that?" You sniff. Salt. Moss. Goat? No, he says. Fear. You glance at him. He nods. Yours. You elbow him in the ribs. He grunts, smiles, then gestures ahead. That rise. Looks like the edge of a settlement. He's right. Just past a clump of wind-bent trees, you spot smoke, thin, straight, lazy. Someone's cooking. Someone doesn't know or doesn't believe yet that Vikings are on their doorstep. Historical fact: surprise was a key tactic in Viking warfare. Many raids happened at dawn or from hidden bays, using speed and silence to sow chaos before resistance could form. The goal wasn't always slaughter, it was disruption, wealth, fear. And sometimes, long-term control. The Jarl gives a subtle hand signal. You and the other flank warriors fan left, circling the ridge. Footsteps are soft on damp grass. Every heartbeat feels like it could give you away. You reach the crest. Below, a coastal hamlet. 10 huts, a stone well, fishing racks, a few goats. Nothing grand. But there's a tower, short, square, likely for signaling ships. And a low wall. Not much, but better than nothing. People are moving. Slowly. Casually. They don't know. Yet. Then, just as the Jarl raises his axe to signal the charge, someone screams. A child, near the well, pointing straight at your ridge. So much for stealth. The Jarl doesn't pause. Go! And like that, you're running again, feet pounding the hill, shield tight, axe up. Rolf howls beside you like a drunken wolf. Men roar. The air fills with chaos. The villagers panic. One drops a basket of eels. Another grabs a spear and promptly trips over a chicken. A bell starts to clang from the tower, sending sharp notes into the sky like arrows. You vault the wall. Badly. You kind of hit your knee and flail, but you're in. A man lunges at you, no armor, just a fishing knife and a lot of poor decisions. You parry. Your axe bites into his side. You don't look twice. Not because you're cold, but because you have to keep moving. Fringe detail: while Viking raids are often imagined as one-sided massacres, some coastal communities had militias or trained guards. Others had warning bells, signal fires, or even hired lookouts. Not always effective, but enough to make a surprise attack much messier. You weave through the chaos. Fires start, small ones. Smoke slinks into the air. You kick a bucket aside and nearly trip over a roasting spit. Someone hurls a rock at your head. It misses, but only barely. Rolf takes down 2 men in the square, then turns and yells, "Behind you!" You pivot just in time to block a spear with your shield. The impact numbs your arm. You swing back, catch your attacker's shoulder. They crumple. You stagger. Your breath is fire. Your legs are jelly. Your fingers are slipping. But you are still on your feet. That counts. Then the bell falls silent. A dull thud. The Jarl steps out from the tower's base, blood on his axe. "Secure the rest," he shouts. "No fire. We take this one whole." That's new. You blink, sucking air. You realize now you're not raiding. You're conquering. Historians still argue whether Vikings intended to settle during their early raids or if conquest was an evolution. Some places, like Normandy, began as temporary raids and became Viking-ruled territories. This moment feels like one of those beginnings. The fighting fades quickly after that. The villagers drop weapons. Some kneel. Some run. Most freeze. You gather near the well. The Jarl speaks in slow, deliberate tones, gesturing to a younger man with a round face and shaky hands. "You," he says. "You speak our tongue?" The man nods. "You are now our mouth here. You tell them we will return. We will rule." They obey, they survive. They resist. He doesn't finish. He doesn't have to. Then the Jarl turns to you all. "No loot. No burn. We take what we need and leave this place as ours. We return in spring." There are murmurs. Some disappointment. But most warriors nod. This isn't about silver anymore. This is about presence. The Jarl points to the ridge. "Signal our ship." You climb the slope with Rolf, both of you limping, panting, bruised. You find a patch of dry brush, lighted with the fish oil torch you've kept since your first raid. Remember that fish oil torch? Still stinks. Still works. Flames rise. Thick smoke curls up into the sky. The dragon ship will see it. As the fire burns, Rolf slumps beside you. "Didn't think I'd miss looting." You shrug. "Didn't think I'd like not running." He grins. Mudleg grows wise. You throw a pebble at him. The sun's beginning to set now, casting long shadows across this half-burned, half-silent hamlet. You hear a child crying softly somewhere near the well. A goat bleats. And behind you, warriors begin loading the ship, quieter now, like they know something has shifted. This wasn't just a raid. This was a message. And you? You helped send it. Your axe doesn't sing. It grunts. It thuds. It complains like a stubborn mule. You've always imagined the sound of battle as some kind of chaotic symphony, steel ringing against steel, warriors bellowing, destiny crackling in the air like a storm waiting to strike. But here, in the middle of this muddy field, knee-deep in blood, breath, and sheer confusion, it's more like badly tuned instruments being hurled down a hill. Loud. Clumsy. Wet. This isn't your first clash now. But it's your first real one. Not a raid. Not a quick strike and dash. This is a battle drawn out, messy, and longer than your legs would prefer. It started at dawn. You remember that much. You stood behind the shield wall, waiting, every breath fogging in front of you, boots squelching in ground still wet from last night's rain. The Jarl walked the line, nodding once to each man like he was checking off a ledger of who might die today. Then came the horns. Not yours. Theirs. A rival clan, defenders of this place you were supposed to claim. Bigger than expected. Angrier than hoped. Also better dressed, which seems rude, frankly. Hold, the Jarl had shouted. Wall tight. And then, crash. Now you're here, several hours later, somehow still upright. You sidestep, parry a blow that should have split your ribcage, and counter with a messy swing that connects with something soft. There's a grunt. A collapse. You don't wait to see the face. Your shield is cracked. Your axe is chipped. Your body feels like it's been personally insulted by every Norse god, twice. To your right, Rolf is fighting with the ferocity of someone who believes every opponent owes him money. His hair is plastered to his face. His arms are red, but it's not clear whether it's blood or berry juice he ate some earlier for energy. Behind you, someone is yelling for a spear. Ahead, a fallen warrior groans, your own side. You lurch forward, grab him by the collar, and drag him back to the line. You're not even sure why, just instinct. Fringe detail, Viking battles weren't elegant. They were chaotic clashes of shield walls, hacking and shoving. Discipline mattered, but so did stamina, luck, and where you happened to be standing when the shouting started. You catch your breath behind a toppled cart. The sun's higher now. You taste iron in your mouth. You check your helmet, it's still slightly too big, still rattles when you nod. A figure breaks from the melee, a young enemy fighter, wild-eyed, swinging a rusted blade. You raise your shield. The blow lands hard, sending a shock down your arm. But you hold. Then whack! Rolf slams his shield into the attacker from the side. The boy crumples like wet paper. Where's your poetry now, mudleg? Rolf shouts. You're enjoying this? I trained for this. You think I spent all that time lifting sheep for fun? You don't have time to reply. Another wave crashes into your line. This one, heavier. More organized. You can hear their commander shouting orders. Their shields push in. You're strained to hold. The shield wall is a living thing. It bends, it breathes. It must not break. Historical fact, the Skjoldborg shield wall was the backbone of Viking field battles. Warriors interlocked shields to form a solid front, protecting those behind and forcing enemies into close combat. It was effective, but only if discipline held. Yours begins to falter. A man to your left falls. The gap opens. You step in. Axes clash. Bodies slam. Your world becomes a narrow tunnel of breath, noise, and instinct. At one point, you fall, trip over something, someone. You don't know. The ground comes up hard. A shadow looms. You roll. Swing. Hit something. They're shouting yours? Theirs? Rolf grabs your arm, hauls you up. You're back in the line, panting, stumbling. Then it shifts. A horn, your horn. From the flank, Scardy. Somehow clean. Somehow grinning. And leading a wave of reinforcements that crashes into the enemy like a surprise winter. They falter. They retreat. You surge. The shouting grows louder now. Joyful. Triumphant. They run. Not all. But enough. The rest throw down weapons, raise hands, drop to knees. Silence, at last. Broken only by the wheezing, coughing, and weeping of men who've lived through too much in too little time. You sink to your knees. Rolf flops beside you, face up in the mud. We won. You nod. Did we win, or just not lose? You blink. Does it matter? He groans. No. Let me just lie here until Valhalla carries me home. You stare at the sky. You think of your mother. You think of that first fish oil torch. Of that muddy village. Of that charm in your belt. Of how your axe no longer feels like a borrowed thing, but like an extension of your arm. And you think, this is what it means to be a warrior. To feel your bones scream. To hold the line. To survive. even when the music isn't beautiful. Let's not pretend you felt heroic. You didn't stand tall on the battlefield afterward, cape flapping in the breeze, hair glistening with righteous sweat. You limped. You bled. You may have cried just a tiny bit when you pulled a splinter out of your thigh that turned out to be part of someone else's shield. But still, you made it. You lived. And now, weirdly, that seems to matter to people. Back at the village, the sun sets on smoke and bruises, and suddenly you're the brave one. The one who stood the line. The one who dragged the wounded. The one who kept swinging even when your helmet slipped down and you couldn't see anything but your own chin. No one sings about that part. You sit near the longhouse fire, hands wrapped around a steaming bowl of something vaguely edible, and try to make sense of it all. Then the Jarl claps a heavy hand on your shoulder and says, "You fought well." You nearly drop the bowl. Thank you." He grunts, which, in Jarl language, is a knighthood. And then, he promotes you. Just like that. You're given a new belt leather, studded with bronze, and a different place at the fire. Closer to the leaders. Not quite a legend, but no longer a beginner. Historical fact: valor in battle could raise a Viking's social status. Warriors who distinguished themselves might receive gifts, better positions in future raids, or places of honor at the hearth. Social mobility was rare, but possible if you survived long enough to earn it. Rolf is outraged on your behalf. They promote you? I was the one who saved you. Twice. That's a minimum of half a promotion. You smirk. Maybe they'll give you a new nickname. His face falls. Don't you dare. Mudleg the Brave. Has a ring to it. I'll replace your mead with goat milk. You raise an eyebrow. You drink goat milk. I do. But you hate it. And revenge is best served warm and slightly grassy. Before the argument devolves into playful shoving, a young girl approaches, one of the villagers from the coast you helped conquer. She holds out a small pouch and points at you. For you, she says in halting Norse. You blink. Why? Fathers say, you didn't hurt us. You take it. Inside, dried berries, a fishhook, and a polished stone. Rolf leans in. Is that friendship loot? You nod slowly. Feels like it. Fringe detail: after conquest, Vikings often assimilated with local communities, sometimes trading gifts, taking spouses, or adopting regional customs. These weren't always violent relationships, many became complex alliances over time. Later that night, the warriors gather to tell stories. The mood is lighter than it should be. Jokes fly. Mead flows. Someone tries to wrestle a pig. The pig wins. Scardy, of course, is meditating with his hands in the fire pit smoke, whispering to the ashes. You think you hear him say, "The bones remember." You decide not to ask. You do, however, end up telling your story. At first, you don't mean to. Someone just asks what happened at the flank, and suddenly you're describing the mud, the noise, the boy with the rusty sword, the splinter you now suspect might still be in your leg. You don't embellish. You don't need to. And when you finish, there's a pause. Then nods. Then a voice from the shadows: you should carry a banner next time. You blink. Me? You stood. That's what matters. Historians still argue whether Viking heroes were self-made or chosen. Some rose through sheer grit. Others were elevated by tales told around fires, by the myth that grew faster than the man. And now, the myth of you is beginning. The Jarl announces a rest period 2 weeks before the next mission. Enough time to recover, train, sharpen your axe, and soak your aching joints in seaweed stew, which smells like kelp and disappointment, but apparently works. You help mend shields, clean weapons, tend to the wounded. And in doing so, you start to realize something. You're no longer just surviving. You're building something. A place. A role. A name. You've stopped waiting for someone to save you or tell you what to do. You're making choices. Small ones, sure. But they add up. You pass by the training field one morning and see a younger boy mimicking your stance, axe high, knees bent. His form is terrible. You walk over. Adjust his arms. Like this, you say. He nods. Rolf calls out from across the field. Mentor Mudleg. You groan. The nickname has spread. But secretly? You don't hate it. Victory doesn't taste like glory. It tastes like ash. The village sits quiet now, claimed, not burned. The smoke rising from the longhouses is from cookfires, not chaos. No screaming. No sword clashing. Just the creak of ropes, the low murmur of fishermen unloading their catch, and the occasional chicken making poor life choices in the middle of the path. You stand in the middle of it all, watching. You're not used to this kind of silence. Not after battle. But the Jarl's plan was clear: hold the land, not just strike it. That means no looting sprees. No bonfires of hay and haymakers. Instead, you walk the muddy paths with purpose, nod at the locals who don't quite meet your eyes, and feel that strange, prickling thing settle in your gut. This is not triumph. It's weight. You pull your new belt tighter, bronze studs catching the light, and try to act like someone who deserves it. Beside you, Rolf chews on something that might have once been bread. So, he mutters, "Is this what winning feels like?" You glance at him. You sound disappointed. I thought there'd be more cheering. Or at least some roasted meat. All I got was this crunchy sadness loaf. You sigh. It's a trade port, not a feast hall. Historical fact: many Viking gains weren't celebrated with wild parties, but with swift consolidation, fortifying defenses, managing trade routes, and negotiating with surviving locals. Less Valhalla rock concert, more very intense urban planning. You walk past the old signal tower, now yours. Two warriors are up top, scanning the horizon. One snoozes. The other's trying to carve a rune into the wood with a butter knife. Progress. In the village square, locals distribute food rations under watch. A few even laugh. Tentatively. You recognize one of the elders, a man you passed during the raid, frozen mid-step with a loaf of rye in hand. Today, he walks with a limp but also carries firewood. It's not forgiveness. But it's something. A young man, barely older than a boy, approaches. No weapons. Just a wary look. You fought well, he says in broken Norse. You pause. You saw that? He nods. My brother tried to kill you. You did not kill him. You remember. The one who charged you and got knocked out cold by a misjudged swing of your axe. You'd kicked his blade away but left him breathing. I'm not here to make enemies, you say. The boy tilts his head. Then why are you here? You don't have an answer. Fringe detail: in the wake of conquest, some Viking warriors became local lords, marrying into native communities and taking on responsibilities. It wasn't always violent domination. In many cases, relationships evolved into something more pragmatic. You sit by the well later that day, watching a small girl play with a carved figurine made from bone, probably once part of a soup. She waves it around like it's a warrior, making tiny battle sounds. Her mother watches from a distance. You sip water, cold and clean. And then bam, Rolf flops down beside you. I've decided something. You brace yourself. Go on. We should ask for livestock in the next raid. You blink. Livestock? Think about it. They can feed you and chase off small invaders. Multi-purpose defense. A goat is basically an angry sack of food on legs. Have you been hit in the head today? Twice. Why? You shake your head, but you're smiling now. He grins. Also, I'm making you something. You narrow your eyes. Please don't say a goat saddle. Nope. Better. Wait and see. Later, back at the longhouse, you understand what he meant. It's a banner. A small one. Tied together from spare cloth and stitched badly with what you assume are your initials, the one is suspiciously shaped like a fish. You're one of us now, Rolf says. You've earned your mark. You stare at the banner. It's awful. It's perfect. You hang it near your sleeping mat. Not because it's beautiful, but because it means something. That night, the Jarl gathers the warriors again. We hold this place until the snow comes, he says. Then we go back. But when we return in spring, we build stronger walls, better docks, real homes. You blink. Homes? You hadn't realized how temporary you still felt. Like you were borrowing every moment. And now the future is growing roots. Historians still argue whether Vikings planned to settle during early raids or if settlement happened by accident. In truth, both are likely. You arrive for gold and glory and stay for goats and governance. You fall asleep that night to the sound of waves. And pigs. And someone snoring aggressively near the fire pit, Scardy, probably. But mostly, you sleep to the soft hush of permanence. Tomorrow, you'll train new recruits. Tomorrow, you'll patrol your corner of this strange, stolen land. But tonight? Tonight, you rest. Not just because you're tired. But because, for the first time, you're home. Night falls with surprising gentleness. You expected more, honestly, drama, thunder, the roar of ghosts come to reclaim the land. But instead, it arrives quietly. The sky shifts from bruised purple to a deep, calm black. Stars appear one by one, like shy storytellers taking their turn around the fire. And here you are, sitting at the edge of camp, wrapped in your cloak, boots off, legs stretched out like they've finally resigned from duty. Your hands are still stained. Your axe lies beside you, dull but faithful. Your helmet rests on your knees. And your thoughts? Your thoughts are loud. You've never been this tired. Not physically, that's a given, but existentially. Like someone opened a door in your chest, and now the cold air of everything you've seen and done is rushing in. The wind shifts. Campfire smoke trails sideways. Somewhere behind you, Rolf is arguing with someone about whether smoked fish can technically be considered dessert. He sounds like he's winning, which means he's definitely losing. But you're not part of that tonight. You're not laughing. You're staring at the stars and asking the question you didn't dare ask until now. Why? Why this? Why you? Why does surviving feel so much like drifting? Historical fact: Viking warriors were deeply spiritual, though not always religious in the way we imagine. They believed in omens, fates, and that their lives were part of a larger, mythic cycle. But they also doubted, feared, wondered. Tonight, you're wondering hard. You pull your mother's charm from your belt, the tiny bronze hammer, the fur, the shell. It's warm from your body, slightly bent, a little dirtier than when she handed it to you. You grip it like it can answer things. But it doesn't. Instead, someone else does. You think they watch us? You glance up. It's Scardy. Of course it's Scardy. He lowers himself to the ground beside you with the slow grace of someone who may or may not be communing with the dead. You say, "You mean the gods?" "No. The ones we left behind." "Ah. That hits differently." You don't answer right away. He reaches into his pouch, pulls out something wrapped in oilcloth. A braid of hair. Small. Golden. He doesn't explain. He doesn't have to. "She was 4, he says quietly. "I thought I'd be gone for a week. It's been 3 winters. You look back at the fire. "Did you mean to stay this long?" He shrugs. "Some men chase glory. Others run from ghosts." You nod. You feel that one deep in your ribs. Fringe detail, not every Viking sailed for conquest. Many left for survival, land scarcity, exile, hunger, or grief. Some hoped to return. Many never did. The sagas don't always say why a man left. Just that he did. Scardy leans back, folding his arms behind his head. "The stars are the same," he murmurs. "That's the trick. Doesn't matter how far you go, those lights follow." You lie back too. They do follow. And for a moment, you feel like a small piece of something much bigger. A dot in the dark. A flicker in the firelight. Silence stretches between you. Not awkward. Just quiet. Then, he says, "You're different, you know." You blink. How? You don't run toward the fight. You check your footing first. You laugh, soft and surprised. "Is that a compliment?" "It's survival," he says. "The loud ones die fast." You both watch the sky. After a while, he stands. "Rest. We leave again soon. You'll need your legs." You sit up. Scardy. He turns. "Do you think any of this matters?" "Us. The fights. The glory. Does it stick?" He stares at you a long moment. Then says, "No. But the way you carry it does." And walks off. You sit alone again. But somehow, less alone than before. Historians still debate what mattered most to Viking warriors: honor, wealth, family, faith. The truth is probably all of it. Or none. Maybe it depended on the man. Maybe it depended on the night. You hold the charm tighter. And think, tomorrow, I'll stand again. Not for the gods. Not for glory. Just because it's what we do. The fire crackles behind you. The sea whispers in the dark. And for once, your mind quiets enough to let you sleep. The fire's low tonight, casting long shadows across the camp like dark fingers reaching through time. You sit close to it, wrapped in your cloak, listening not to the wind, not to the waves, but to the stories. They always come after a battle. When bellies are full and bruises are tender, when swords are oiled and shields patched. That's when the tales rise like smoke, slow, curling, strange. Some true. Some not. All unforgettable. Tonight's storyteller is an older warrior, Bjorn One Eye, called that because, well, it's a very literal nickname. His face is a roadmap of scars. His voice is sandpaper and ale. He sits cross-legged on a log, sharpening a knife that looks older than most of the village children. "Was a winter like this one," he says, tapping the blade to his knee. "Years back. I was younger, dumber, and had 2 eyes." The crowd chuckles. Rolf snorts into his mug. "And we were camped north of Jutland. Thick woods. Cold as hell's toes. We were tracking a rival band, nasty lot, wore wolf pelts and didn't blink much. You sip your drink, something hot and vaguely spiced, and settle in. You've heard stories like this before, but something about the crackle of fire and the hush of listening warriors makes them hit harder out here. They caught us sleeping," Bjorn continues. "Crept in like ghosts. We woke to screaming in fire. I saw my brother fall. And I ran, yes, I ran. Because I was clever, and he was already dead." He pauses, then adds, "Or so I thought." Everyone leans in. You included. "He found me the next morning. Bloody. Laughing. Covered in mud and someone else's hand. Said the gods weren't done with him. Said he'd been guided by a dream." "Of what?" someone asks. Bjorn shrugs. "A white bear in the shape of a woman. Said she showed him where to hide." A few warriors scoff. One spits into the dirt. Another crosses himself quietly with Thor's hammer. You glance at Rolf. He's wide-eyed. Skardi is smiling. Of course he is. Fringe detail, Norse folklore is packed with shapeshifters, spirits, and dream guides. Warriors often believed their fates were tied to animal omens, or that dead relatives could offer protection from the beyond. Dreams were not dismissed, they were warnings. Someone across the fire speaks up, a younger warrior, barely a beard on his face. "What about the old ones? The sea spirits?" Everyone quiets. The mood shifts. Even the fire seems to flicker nervously. "I heard," the boy continues, "that sometimes, if you don't give a proper offering after a raid, they follow you home." A silence settles. Thick. Heavy. Skardi finally speaks. "They do." His voice is soft. Firm. He doesn't blink. "I've seen them," he says. Eyes in the dark. Figures just beyond the firelight. Not ghosts. Not quite. Something older. Something, watching. You shiver. Not because you believe him, but because, deep down, part of you does. Rolf nudges you. "You ever feel something out there? When we sailed home last month?" You think back. The fog. The strange stillness. That moment when you thought something moved beneath the boat. You nod. Slowly. "Yeah," you say. "I did." Historical debate, Viking beliefs blended myth and lived experience. While modern scholars argue over what was real to them, it's clear that fear of gods, fate, the sea, the dark was not just superstition. It was survival. You didn't need to see the spirit to believe it might be there. The fire pops. Someone throws on a log. Conversation returns, lighter this time. Jokes about Rolf's ghost-proof snoring. A mock duel breaks out between 2 drunk warriors using spoons. Even Skardi laughs, well, he exhales in a way that vaguely resembles amusement. But the stories stay with you. You lie in your cot that night, staring at the rafters. Listening. Not just to the creaks of the longhouse or the slow breath of sleeping men, but for something else. You remember Bjorn's brother. The white bear. The eyes beyond the fire. You pull your charm from your belt and place it on your chest. Just in case. You drift in and out of dreams, some strange, some simple. One of them, you, standing in fog, axe in hand, a voice behind you whispering your name. You turn. But nothing's there. When you wake, the fire is low. And the village is still. But for just a moment, as your eyes adjust, you think you see a shape at the edge of the longhouse door. Not moving. Not breathing. Watching. Then it's gone. You pull the blanket higher. Sleep does not return easily. Morning brings a bruised sky and a limp wind. You stretch outside the longhouse, your breath blooming in the cold air, the taste of last night's fire smoke still in your throat. Around you, the village stirs slowly, boots crunching on frost, chickens muttering dark gossip in the mud, a baby crying somewhere near the livestock pen like it already knows this world is not designed for peace and quiet. You rub your eyes. Another day. You're halfway to the well when she calls your name. The voice is low, sharp, unmistakably sober, which, at this hour, is already suspicious. You turn to see her, Brynja, the shield maiden with the permanent scowl, arms folded, axe on her back, and the gait of someone who's spent most of her life breaking bones and expectations. She's younger than most, older than you, and famously once bit a man's ear off for calling her little sister. Got a moment? She asks. You nod. Historical fact, while often overshadowed in popular depictions, women fought alongside men in some Viking battles. The sagas and burial finds show that some were not only warriors but commanders. Their presence wasn't symbolic. It was earned. Brynja leads you behind the old smithy, where the clang of hammers gives the illusion of privacy. She drops something in your hand. A tooth. Human. You blink. Yours, she says. Came loose in the last skirmish. I pulled it out of the mud. You gape at her. You kept it? She shrugs. Thought you might want it. Or trade it. You hold it up. Trade it for what? My favor. You lower the tooth slowly. That's a thing now? In my system, yes. You grin despite yourself. So, what does your favor get me? She taps the hilt of her axe. An ally. A blade. A voice when the Jarl listens. Now that's valuable. You nod, tuck the tooth into a pouch like it's a gold coin, and say, deal. Fringe detail, in some Norse communities, symbolic exchanges carried more weight than formal contracts. A shared drink, a blood mix, even a physical token like a tooth or a nail could cement an agreement. Weird? Absolutely. But it meant something. Brynja nods once and walks off without fanfare. You stare after her, then check your pouch. Charm. Tooth. Fishhook gift from the girl back in the coastal hamlet. Your pockets are becoming a museum of emotional baggage. Later, at training drills, the Jarl watches from the platform as you lead two new recruits through shield wall practice. You're still not used to being the one giving commands. But they listen. They follow. And by the third repetition, the formation actually holds. Rolf calls out from the sidelines. Look at you. Father of formations. Mudleg the mentor. You toss a pebble at him. Careful, or I'll mentor my fist into your ribs. You say the sweetest things. Training ends just before lunch. You're heading to the cookfire when you hear shouting near the docks. You jog over half out of curiosity, half out of fear someone let Scardy handle a rope again. Turns out, it's a trader. A small ship, 3 crew, 1 chest. The man in front is wrapped in fur and riddles, calling himself Eric from nowhere, and trying very hard to convince the villagers that he has seen the future. It's in the north, he says. A kingdom of ice and iron. Untouched. Rich. Ripe. But cursed. You sigh. There's always a catch. Still, the crowd listens. Even the Jarl listens. Because every new raid starts with a whisper and a what if? Eric opens his chest. Inside, silver bracelets, fur-lined cloaks, and a map that looks like it was drawn by someone who sneezed while holding a quill. But it's something. You step forward, scan it. A coastline. A river. A symbol that might mean danger or might be someone's best attempt at a fish. Rolf leans in. So, new adventure? You nod slowly. Maybe. Because something in your bones tells you that this isn't just another raid. This could be a shift. The kind that puts you in stories. That night, you sit by the fire again, polishing your axe, the bronze glinting in the flames. Across the way, Brynja sharpens her blade. Skardi hums to himself. Rolf carves your new banner onto a plank, badly. You feel it. The wind. The weight. The promise of what comes next. And for once, instead of fear, you feel ready. Not because you're strong. Not because you're sure. But because you're not alone anymore. You've got allies. A name. A tooth in your pouch. And a fight that isn't just survival now. It's purpose. The ship groans beneath you, familiar and alive, like it's missed you. You step aboard slowly, your boots leaving wet prints on the oiled deck, and run your hand along the carved edge of the prow. The dragon's head, weather-worn and toothy, greets the horizon with the same smug confidence you wish you had. Rolf slaps your back. Told you we'd be back here. You also said the goat wouldn't bite. He holds up a bandaged finger. That goat's soul was forged in hell. You grin, but it fades quickly as the crew finishes loading supplies: rope, dried meat, spare oars, a barrel of questionable ale, and silence begins to settle across the dock. This isn't like last time. Not a raid. Not a conquest. A return. To lands already touched by your boots, to faces you half remember, some fearful, some respectful, some with scores to settle. You look back at the village. It's different now. Not just stronger. Yours. The Jarl stands at the edge of the dock, arms crossed, face unreadable. He won't be coming. Not this time. The land needs a ruler. The ship needs something else. You. You try not to look surprised when he gives a single nod. You return it with one of your own. Because if he says it out loud, if he names you anything, you might forget how to breathe. Historical fact: Viking leadership wasn't always centralized. A trusted warrior could be given charge of an expedition without a formal title. Authority earned more by respect than ceremony. Command was as much about charisma as conquest. You climb to the front of the ship as the last ropes are pulled. Brynja takes her place near the stern. Skardi is already perched at midship, face turned toward the wind, mumbling what you now call Skardiisms. Rolf whistles. One last trip before the snow sticks. You glance up at the sky. Gray. Heavy. Waiting. Then, oars in. And the sea takes you. It's strange how quickly everything feels both new and old again. The rhythm of rowing. The slap of spray. The creak of timber. Your body falls into it like it never left. You adjust your helmet. It still doesn't fit right. Some things never change. The river mouth you follow is narrow, coiled between cliffs like it's trying to keep secrets. The map Eric gave you was barely more than a suggestion. and your only real guide is instinct and a string of vague directions that included look for the tree that smells wrong. The crew is quiet. Focused. Not solemn, but something close. They know this matters. That this isn't a casual exploration. It's a message. A presence. A statement carved into the land with boot prints and iron. And yet, as you sail farther inland, you start to wonder. What if the land has its own message? The trees grow denser. The sky lowers. Birds vanish. Fringe detail, some Viking riverside landings were met with supernatural dread by the locals. Certain forests, certain bends in the river, were thought cursed or watched. These places often appeared in folklore as lands where the sky doesn't listen. The ship slows. You reach a bend, where the cliffs rise higher and the wind stops entirely. Then, you see it. A shape. A stone tower, crumbled but not empty. Smoke curls lazily from the ruins. Someone lives there. Or hides. You pull in the oars. The crew draws weapons slowly. You raise a hand. Wait. Rolf whispers, "This is one of those moments, isn't it?" What kind? The kind that gets turned into sagas or gravestones. You step ashore. The earth is soft here, too soft. Your boots sink deeper than they should. The air smells wrong, like wet iron and old milk. The crew follows, forming a loose arc behind you. Brynja appears beside you, axe in hand. You feel that? You nod. It's not fear. It's memory. Like this place has already happened to you in some other life. You advance. The tower comes into full view, burned once, maybe twice, then rebuilt by someone who didn't know when to quit. A woman appears in the doorway. Gray hair. Leather apron. Crossbow aimed squarely at your chest. She doesn't blink. State your purpose. Your voice surprises even you. Return, you say. We claimed this land before. Now we hold it. She studies you. Longer than is comfortable. Then lowers the bow. About time, she says, and steps aside. Historians still debate whether Viking settlement was resisted or accepted. Records show both. But some places wanted protection. Wanted trade. Wanted strength. It was never just about taking. Sometimes, it was about offering something sharper than peace. You spend the rest of the day checking the area, marking paths, setting guards. The locals, there are more, are quiet, but not terrified. Curious. Some even nod to you. You feel the shift again. Not just presence. Belonging. That night, back at camp, Rolf stirs the fire with a stick shaped like a question mark. Think we'll stay? You lie back against your pack. Depends. On what? If the snow says yes. He chuckles. Above you, the stars start to appear. You reach for your pouch. Charm. Tooth. Fish hook. They're all still there. So are you. And the land? It doesn't reject you. Not tonight. The snow falls in slow spirals, like it's thinking carefully about where to land. You sit on the edge of the bluff above the camp, cloak wrapped tight, watching the white blanket grow thicker across rooftops, across the longship moored at the frozen shore, across the half-built palisade walls that creak when the wind hums through them. It's quiet here. But not empty. Below, the fires crackle in hearths. Laughter drifts from the longhouse. Someone, probably Rolf, is arguing with a pot again. Skardi walks the edge of the treeline with a torch and a mutter, blessing stones, trees, shadows. Brynja sharpens her axe without looking up. And you? You just sit. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, you let yourself do nothing. Not prepare. Not defend. Not endure. Just exist. Because the raid is over. The conquest, the claiming, the endless motion, it's all settled for now. Not finished. Never finished. But slowed. Like the sea after a storm, still whispering, still watchful, but gentle. The village has changed. You've changed. You're not the raw recruit with blistered hands and a borrowed axe anymore. Your armor still smells like fear, but it fits now. Your name means something here, Mudleg, ridiculous as it started, now spoken with fondness and, dare you admit it, a little respect. Historical fact, Viking settlements didn't just survive winters, they thrived through them, crafting tools, strengthening alliances, holding festivals. Winter wasn't the end. It was the pause. The breath between verses of a longer saga. You run a hand over the hilt of your axe. The edge is dull. You'll sharpen it tomorrow. Or the next day. You have time now. You pull out the pouch. One by one, you lay the contents across your knee. The fishhook, from the girl who forgave you. The tooth, traded for trust. The charm, still warm from your chest. Each a story. A version of you, frozen in time. A boy in a shield wall. A voice in the dark. A name someone else remembered. And now, finally, you add something new. A small, twisted ring made from 2 strands of iron, a token given to you by the village elder this morning. For protection, he said. And remembrance. Of what you took. And what you gave. You didn't know what to say then. You still don't. But your hands tremble as you tie it into the pouch. Fringe detail, Viking memory culture was tactile. Charms, tokens, rings, bones, they were more than symbols. They were anchors for stories. Passed down. Whispered over firelight. Lost. Found again. Everything you kept meant something. A gust of wind flutters your cloak. And then, soft footsteps. You turn slightly. Rolf drops down beside you, teeth chattering. Too quiet in there, he says. Someone started singing. And not in a good way. Like, scared the goats level bad. You smile without looking. He stretches his legs out next to yours. So, what now? You let the silence sit a moment. Then say, we stay. He nods. For how long? You shrug. Until the sea calls again. Think it will? It always does. He leans back on his elbows, staring up at the snowflakes swirling overhead. You know, he says, this started with you getting smacked in the face by a pot of pottage. You laugh. I remember. You said it was an omen. And it was. Just not sure if it was good or bad. You watch a snowflake melt on your glove. Does it matter, you ask? Rolf grins. Not if we keep winning. You sit like that for a while. 2 warriors who no longer feel like ghosts in borrowed stories. Because this story is yours now. Not because you conquered. But because you stayed. Because you carried your scars with grace. Because you built something that will outlast the next wave of snow, and maybe even the next war. Historians don't always know what happened to warriors like you. The sagas follow kings and killers, legends and liars. But not the quiet ones. Not the ones who chose to hold land instead of burn it. To build instead of brag. But here, under the sky, on this cliff, with snow on your cloak and ash on your hands, you were not just a blade. You were a root. You whisper into the wind, almost too soft for even yourself to hear, "I was here." Then you stand. You walk back to camp. And behind you, the snow keeps falling, gently, like the sky is tucking you in. A quiet ending. A warrior's lullaby. Sleep now, Mudleg. Your saga is told.